a player, an island, a tree, a cobblestone generator, and a seed, and then gain access to the vast majority of mobs through spawning, and given enough time, then eventually be able to craft every single workbench in Hytale. But what if we did that? How far can we take Skyblock, and what exactly can we obtain through all of the resources at our disposal? Let's start with the spawning. If you place a block in the plains biome, you're guaranteed to trigger a spawn from one of these creatures. They all come from different lists within the game, and depending on what zone and environment you find yourself in, you will uncover specific sets of mobs that are instructed to spawn in that area. But not every block is a viable spawn area, and some blocks would only work on some entities. To make it easier, I've placed and organized every single spawn in Hytale and visualized the category of spawnable blocks they're listed on. As you can see, some mobs can only spawn on rocks, some can only spawn on the sand block and nothing else. A few mobs don't have any spawn block, which is usually fish, because they need to spawn anywhere within water. And also the Skeleton Praetorian! Out of all mobs for some reason. You'll notice this if you ever explore the ocean floor around Zone 4. They'll be walking around there. It's not much you need to keep track of, because the vast majority of mobs qualify to spawn on soil. The soil category is by far the most common spawning block and includes every block that has the soil prefix or the plant prefix within their ID, with the exception of plant leaves, mud, and anything within water. Because coral block's ID starts with plant, they also work as they technically count as a soil block as well. But we don't have corals, and we don't have sand, so where does that leave us? Through drops alone, this is what we gain access to. Because we can't gain access to any sand or snow, there are a few items that remain inaccessible through spawns. But if you can live without the cactus, there are a few ways to obtain the rest with the addition of two of the most critically important items in Hytale. This is a marker, a specific point in the world where mobs can spawn and are strictly bound to. If you've ever had mobs randomly despawn, it could be because it's gotten too far away from their marker and has teleported back. But we want them to teleport, because only through that can we determine exactly where their marker is, so we can save it. The only reason you're seeing them now is because I've turned on this setting in Creative, which allows me to see all the markers, but in Survival they're all invisible. If a mob dies that has spawned from a marker, that marker will trigger a timer until it checks for a viable spot for the next mob to spawn. But it only looks for a spawnable area directly beneath it with a 4-block range, so should you place a platform 5 blocks beneath it, it will not be able to detect a viable spawn location when the timer runs out, and that'll destroy the marker entirely. But if you place a platform correctly, the marker will keep spawning that mob for us to farm, and by using this method, we can capture the Firesteel Golems, Klops Gentlemen, and the Goblin Thieves, as they are our only source of iron and copper until we can craft the Salvager's Workbench. A few markers can spawn several mobs, and in the case of the Goblin Thief, I've only seen them spawn in a marker labeled as Goblin. When I first captured a thief, I thought it had turned into a regular goblin after they died, but no, I just got unlucky with the spawn rates, and if you look within the files, it'll tell us directly it has a 15% chance to spawn each time the marker is reset. If you're persistent, another one will spawn, and this is great, because not only do thieves give us iron and copper, it essentially has 2 drops, one from the body and one from the chest. Now that we have access to marker spawns, we can add all of this to our drops. If we then craft the Salvager's Workbench, we can recycle these materials and add a few more items as well. But now that we know every loot drop in Skyblock, let's visualize what progression will look like through this experimental creative world. These 2 sections here are the furniture and builder's workbenches, and I color-coded them to match the progression of the farmer's workbench. But I made a mistake. Almost all crafting recipes use this icon to list any kind of wood as an ingredient, and because the workbenches don't regularly display any additional text, I thought this was universal. Because the armorer's workbench lists specific wood with the correct icon, but I never highlighted that icon on the farmer's workbench, which says that it actually needs specific wood types that we can only unlock if we find it in the wild first. If we didn't have to depend on specific wood types, we would have had 5 extra chests filled with seeds, a few tools, but mostly through the 7 types of logs that could have been used with the builder's workbench. Some blocks, like the wood, can be used to craft a complete set of matching decor, and although 4 of those sets are now gone without the additional upgrades, the hardwood set stays, because you don't actually need the oak sapling for hardwood. You can capture torque markers and recycle their weapons for hardwood planks. But with the farmer's workbench, we still gain access to 4 unique crops, several tools and utilities for farming, the beech tree, and the softwood planks for the crude set. But sets of decor can't only be made from wood, we can also get 2 extra sets of decor through the cobblestone alone. One's for the cobblestone itself, but if you use that to craft stone bricks, you can send them through again for even more stone decor. Because of these, I also discovered that if you send gold through the smelter twice, it will turn into a brick, which becomes an additional set of the builder's workbench. But we can't get gold in the Skyblock, I know you're all saying behind your screens. But we can. Thanks to our iron, we'll be able to get gold through the fishing trap. If you look at the JSON file that lists all of the drops, this is everything that can be retrieved through the fishing trap. This image doesn't represent the chances of getting any of these items though, because it'll all be salt. There's a 0.25% chance to fish up gold ore, and we can improve this by placing rows of traps to maximize our intake of as much gold as possible. Because apparently, fishing traps don't need a water source to be planted on, it can be placed on waterfalls. The only requirement is that the water exists in a 3x2 area and that the trap is placed on the surface. So, you can create a fishing farm by letting water cover a platform, then destroying the ground underneath it, to open up new surface area for fishing traps while the water remains in contact with the water source. There are 3 other items with the same rarity as gold. A spare, a large pile of treasure, and also a peculiar plant. There's several plants within the fishing trap, but only this one is legendary, and I think I know why. Because if you look at its ID, it clearly states itself as Plant Flower Walter White. This cannot be an accident. I challenge anyone who plays Skyblock to find Walter White as an achievement. We can also trade with the Quebecs. And if we use the essence of life that we get from farming, we can gain access to all of this. Most importantly, the 3 kinds of berry bushes, which we can use to harvest wild berries. Because we can't max out the farmer's workbench for coconut, the berries will be our only source of fruit and can be used to craft a fish bait or feeding bags to lure animals. With access to gold, we can finally craft the alchemist's workbench and gain access to 1 new item. While we're on the discussion of useless workbenches, you can waste 10 thorium to craft an arcanist workbench that is literally useless. You can't craft more dirt technically, but you can change the appearance of dirt with the farmer's workbench if you have some spare plant fiber. But even though we can't get more dirt, we can, however, get more blocks with the soil prefix. Remember that? From the fishing trap, you have a 3% chance to catch some stone rubble. But you can also grind down regular cobblestone with the salvager's workbench and use the farmer's workbench to create 7 types of gravel, all of which can be used to plant trees and works as a substitute for practically all kinds of spawning through soil. Sadly, the gravel can't be tilted for farming, so we still need all the dirt we can get. But should you want to get rid of your limited dirt for some reason, you can waste 2 forever by crafting a single planter. Now, let's craft everything we can, all of which finally brings us to this. The complete list of everything you can unlock in Skyblock. There might even be more that I haven't seen yet, because I've definitely seen some oddities when making this list. The Goblin Miner in particular has no listed drops to reference from, but it does drop items, and I found a template file that indicates it might get its drops from the Goblin Scrapper instead. The Goblin Duke should drop silver, but it doesn't. And also, where are the fish? Some items never appeared once in the creative menu, and you'd think it's like random trinkets and stuff, but no! All of the ingots are here as well! Hytale is still in early access, so we'll probably get a lot more unlocks, like silver, when it finally releases. But this is the end for now. If you want to try this out, I've already published a template Skyblock World to Curseforge, and that can act as a starting point to all of this. So I recommend trying it out if you can get past some weird bugs with some liquids that I couldn't get rid of.